So, for whatever reason, talking about independent horror films can be a controversial topic. Some people find them to be overrated or just pretentious. Some people find them to be diamonds in the rough. No matter where you stand on that, though, I think 2024 might be the year of independent horror cinema. Hey, what's up everybody? It's Nick here from the Lost River Drive-In, and today I want to talk to you guys about independent horror cinema in the year of 2024. Now, I gotta preface this by saying that this is not my strong suit. It absolutely isn't. This isn't gonna be me going down the list of all these incredible independent horror films that I feel like you guys should watch, and me singing the praises of movies you've never heard of before. Simply because it wasn't until a couple years ago where I actually started to go out and support independent horror cinema in the theater. And I think 2024 has really been a strong year for independent horror cinema, and I think it's only going to continue. Now, I look back on this year, and there's a lot of movies that really stand out. It really only further prove the point that 2024 has been a really strong year for independent horror cinema, and I think mass audiences are actually starting to catch on. Looking first at Shudder and IFC Films and some of the movies they've put out this year. First was Late Night with the Devil, which you guys know I did a review on my channel for, and I adored that movie. I loved it. It was probably my favorite horror movie of the year until The First Omen came out a month later, but I loved that movie. And I don't know where I'd put it now, maybe at 2 or 3 of the year, but it's a great movie. And it made almost $13 million on a shoestring budget. That was a big deal. Another thing to remember with these movies is they usually get released in 2,000 to 2,500 theaters. You're looking at almost half of what major releases get. Deadpool and Wolverine's going to be out in about 4,000 theaters when it comes out next week. These independent horror films, they get about half that. And they have little to no budget. So when you're making over $10 million, that's a huge win. Then you look at In a Violent Nature. In a Violent Nature was a super low budget Canadian horror film from the POV of the killer, which is something that you really don't see a lot, if at all. That movie was definitely very niche, but it made over $4 million at the box office. And that was a flash in the pan. It came out and it was gone. But that movie did really well. Now again, you guys are hearing some of these numbers and you're probably like, well, that's nothing. That's not really a big box office return. But when all of these movies were made for $200,000 to $1 million, they're quadrupling their budgets on all of these. And if nothing else, they always have a super long life on home video too. So that's just to start with Shudder and IFC Films. Then you got to look at Neon. And I said in my review for Longlegs, I think this could be the year of Neon. We saw that happen with A24 a couple years ago, where they really made their mark with movies like Hereditary and Midsommar. That was when people really started to notice A24. Casual moviegoers did. I think this might be that year for Neon. Now, it should be noted first that Neon usually puts more money into their productions than, say, Shudder and IFC Films do. They're a bit more established so they can afford higher budget movies, but these are still not big budget movies. Earlier this year, they came out with Immaculate, starring Sydney Sweeney, and she's an up-and-coming name. A lot of people know who she is. The movie was made on a $9 million budget and made over $27 million worldwide, and really kind of got Neon's name out there to people that might not have been familiar, like myself. It was a big win and a big start for Neon. Then came Longlegs, a movie that a month ago, horror fans, they were aware of it. They were looking forward to it, especially because, Nick Cage and Maika Monroe. But in the last couple weeks, it really started to pick up traction. People were really talking about this movie. And that was the word of mouth and the trailers and the marketing. That debuted to over $22 million this weekend alone in the United States. We don't have international numbers yet. The budget for this was a little under $10 million. That is huge. This movie has already more than doubled its budget just domestically in its opening weekend. Now, that is unheard of for Neon. This is going to be Neon's biggest film ever. It is going to probably cross 45 to 50 million domestically and end its international run probably 70, 80 million dollars. And it could even reach upwards of that if this word of mouth is really continuing to be strong. That's a huge deal. Longlegs is a great film, and I recommend you guys go check it out and support it. But after that came out, I was like, oh man, Neon is on a heater here. And they've got another one where the marketing is really starting to ramp up for it, coming out in a couple weeks, and that's called Cuckoo. Now, I had not seen the trailer for that one until I went and saw Longlegs, and I was definitely intrigued by the trailer. Now, is this going to be a long leg situation? I simply don't think so. But this is going to be a hit for Neon. So they're going to be talking about a year where they put out 3 really high-profile films in the horror genre where they made over $100 million collectively and probably spent $25 million collectively. That's huge for this studio. That is going to make this studio really start to get themselves out there more. So this could be the year of Neon. And don't be surprised if Cuckoo does get insanely good reviews and it has really good legs and a strong opening weekend. Because over the next few weeks or month or so, there's not really much horror coming out that a lot of people are dying to see. Sure, you have other counter programming that people are going to go see, like Deadpool and Wolverine and Twisters, but horror fans, they'll show up for horror movies, especially if they hear those horror movies are good. I mean, hell, we showed up for Jeepers Creepers Reborn and that movie sucked. And then look no further than A24, a studio that really has made a name for themselves, and most people know who they are now. Starting with I Saw the TV Glow. This movie was made on a shoestring budget, and it made about $5 million worldwide. Now, this was a movie I wanted to see, but it wasn't playing near me. It truly got a limited release. So to make more than 5 times your budget, and it was just a flash in the pan, it was here and it was gone, that's a pretty good start for A24. Then they had Civil War. Now, this was a big deal for A24 because obviously with a title like that and the subject matter, you already had people like, oh no. I haven't seen the film, but I heard it walked the line very well with that subject matter, and a lot of people seem to like it. It didn't seem to piss them off, which is great. I love when we can come together and agree with that. Now, this one was made on a budget of $50 million, but it made almost $110 million worldwide, so it definitely made its money back. This was a big play by A24. This was probably their most expensive movie to date. I actually think it was. And it paid off for them. They didn't lose money on this thing. It's hard to look at A24 now and be like, oh, independent horror studio, but they still are. But this was their big gamble, and it worked for them. And then you look at Maxine, the capper of the X trilogy, the one that got the biggest marketing push, made on a budget of around $2 million. I'd venture to say the marketing was probably at least $5 million or so alone for this movie. But I thought big with this movie. I thought this was going to be the biggest of the X trilogy. And I was right. As we sit today, the movie sits at $15 million worldwide, which makes it the biggest of the X trilogy. After a couple more weeks, it's probably going to do what I thought it would, make what X and Pearl did combined. That's a big win for A24 when it comes to this trilogy. Because a trilogy of movies that overall the budget was collectively about $4 million for all 3 movies, they're going to walk away profiting tens of millions of dollars from this trilogy. That's huge. That's a really big deal. Especially when you think about a movie like Pearl that was really niche. That wasn't like you could sell that as a slasher movie like you could X. Or even Maxine, which was definitely very different than what we expected. I loved Maxine. But all 3 of these movies were huge tonal shifts. And Maxine is the most successful of all 3. I could go down the list about movies that are yet to come or other ones that I might have missed. But what's the point of this video? The point of this video is to say independent horror is doing really, really well right now. And when I look back at this year, some of my favorite movies of this year are independent horror films. Maxine, Longlegs, Late Night with the Devil. That says something. I was talking to my buddy Mark the other day on Instagram, and he for a long time has sung the praises of these independent horror movies and independent studios. And he's absolutely right. I had said to him, I'm so glad in recent years I've actually gone out and started to seek these out more. I didn't have this preconceived notion that they were bad. And that was the thing that I wanted to talk about at the top of this video. It seems like people hear independent horror films and sometimes they either think, oh, it's probably just this artsy, egotistical exercise, or they think, oh, it's probably just this low budget crap. And neither one of those is true. I think generalizations like that on either side of any situation are just unfair and grossly ignorant. You need to seek these things out for yourself. Don't hear about it from somebody else and make that form your opinion. Don't watch a review on YouTube and think, oh, they must all be like this. This is coming from someone that thought Midsummer was a movie like that. I found it to be pretentious. I found it was trying to be artsy just to be artsy. Didn't really have much to say. That was me. It also didn't color my opinion on these studios and these filmmakers as a whole. Because everyone's allowed to drop the ball every now and then. But if in recent years some of the best horror movies have been independent horror films and some of the most successful in terms of compared to their budget have been independent horror films, that should tell you something. Go out and see them. People are telling you to go see them. They're good movies. It also shows you don't need $30 million to make a good horror film. My favorite movie of this year still is The First Omen. I loved that film. It had a budget of $30 million. And sure, it shows up on screen. But it could have been such a bigger hit if they could have kept the budget down. We would look at The First Omen totally differently. It was a massive success, a big return for The Omen. But way too much money went into it, and not enough marketing was put behind it. These independent horror studios have it figured out. They've figured out what they're doing. They're continuing to make loads of money, putting out good products. Go see them. Go support them. This is the future of horror cinema, in my opinion. While companies like Warner Brothers don't do shit with horror, A24, Neon, they're doing it. Shudder and IFC are really starting to make a name for themselves. They're doing it. Go out and support them. So to wrap this up, I don't know if I can say this is the year for independent horror cinema, because I'm sure there's been a couple years like this, and they've just flown under my radar, because I haven't really exposed myself to it until a year or two ago. But I'm telling you, I think that this year is a renaissance for that. And I love that I'm getting to witness it and live through it. And I want you guys to do that too. So comment down below and let me know what you think about the state of independent horror cinema, the state of these independent horror studios, or just studios in general, but they do make a lot of horror films. I want to hear what you guys think of them. Is this something you've recently gotten into, or have you still not gotten into it? Is this something you have sung the praises of forever, like my buddy Mark? I want to hear that down below in the comments section. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please leave a like on it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I am pulling out.